Locally, I'd like to know why, and I'd really like to hear from our state assembly and senate candidates also, because district-wide, I think you've got some knowledge of where that might already be going on, but why is that not something, or is it something we should look into for Mount Olive?
Well, yes, it's something we should look into Mount Olive. I don't know whether people know it, if you go over to Benjamin Moore over in Flanders. They've got a huge solar farm.
Right, I'm familiar with that.
And one of the, when I purchased my solar panels, one of the restrictions was I could only put up enough solar panels to supply the electricity for my house.
Right.
And so I couldn't put any more than 24 panels, which was 7,400 kilowatt hours, on my roof. So I think
Right.
that's a restriction. I'm not sure how it applies to open space. I know that the council was looking into turning Comeville North into a solar farm. And evidently that was felt to be profitable, and as I recall, it was they weren't finally able to do it because the state would not allow them. Or not, was it the state or the? I think it was
It's a state regulation because of the EPA and the circumstances having to do with Como.
We're not allowed to do it. So yes, I think we should be encouraging all of those.
Most of the open space in town, or what you see as open space, is actually farmed.
Right.
Now, there's a lot of other land, but you'd be cutting down trees and quote-unquote taking open space and converting it to solar farms. And I think the people would much rather prefer to have trails and
Right,
open
and
space.
I wasn't, yeah, let me be a little more clear then. I guess I wasn't talking about using open space, I was talking about the concept of preservation of farmland and large pieces of land. You know, I have friends that have 250 acres in Hillsborough and in Somerset County, and you know, they use it for hunting and they use it for a number of things, but they actually have cleared a section to be able to put solar panels in on the property that relates specifically, they have some kind of arrangement that they are going to, you know, deed part of that property back to the township, and there's some kind of partnership going on between Hillsborough and residents that have that kind of property. And so not only are those friends of mine who own that property benefiting from it in terms of their, you know, their tax situation, but they're also contributing to the community and preserving space that's already there. So I do, you know, I've seen farms all over. I do a lot of outdoor recreation and driving through this part of the state, and I've seen that in a number of areas, in Hunterdon County, Warren County, Sussex County. So I just wanted to know what you thought about it on a municipal level. And I think Susie had a question. I don't know.
I did have a question. I had my hand up.
Sorry.
I was wondering what we're doing right now locally about the opioid epidemic and what you guys have in mind and maybe doing more locally about, because I did see in some of the things that have been on Facebook lately that we lost 5 people just in Mount Olive this year.
That's a really great question, and you know, I'm a registered nurse, and so healthcare and addictions and the whole opioid crisis is something that's really important to me. And as a resident of Mount Olive, really it affects all of us. You know, whether it's someone in your family, someone that you work with, there's no one that's not touched by the opioid crisis. I've actually had the honor of having some conversation with Chief Beecher about his thoughts about the opioid epidemic and what can be done. And obviously it's not a problem that we can arrest our way out of. It's really, the police are really dealing with a number of arrests for heroin and other illegal drugs almost on a daily basis. This is something that's going to affect not just Mount Olive, but the whole country for years and years to come as people go through addiction and recovery cycles. So I think that what we need to do is to be proactive and look at it from a prevention standpoint, but things, not just things in the school district and not just a Just Say No campaign, but what are we doing to support recovery efforts and rehab availability locally so that people don't have to go out of the area to get help. And I know that this is not just something that's important to me, but I know that Kate also has some very strong feelings about what needs to be done differently. I don't know if you want to say a few words.
Well, there's two things. Sussex County has a great program called CLEAR, and CLEAR is a program that started in Newton, and it was very, very successful. You can walk in or call the police, the police, and you can say, I have a problem, or you can even be on drugs. They will take you in. They will give you to a recovery coach and put you straight into detox, no questions asked. They'll take away your drugs, of course, but you won't get arrested. They won't prosecute. They won't do anything. And they've just expanded it to 9, I think, additional police departments in Sussex County. It's kind of a no-brainer that I would love to see it introduced to Mount Olive, because the Mount Olive Police Department is so stellar, and I think it could be seamlessly introduced to Chief Beecher. And it's something where I've talked to so many police officers who feel like they have such a purpose in life now besides just putting people in a jail cell, or they're able to actually help people, and these people come back to them and say, you saved my life that day when I came to you. So that's one thing. The other thing is, one of the reasons I'm running, which is that we have anti-opioid, awareness legislators. We have 2 out of 3 legislators. Our state senator, who had a no vote on S3, which was the major drug policy reform that we just passed, that Chris Christie signed, which was to mandate drug rehabilitation and an abstention from Parker Space. The only one who voted for it was Gail Phoebus, who's not running, and who vocally says she's in recovery. So she obviously, that's no knowledge, I'm not saying anything about her anonymity or anything. She's a staunch advocate of recovery and understands what happens. In the debate a week ago or so, I think that maybe, if anyone watched it, you watched Parker Space said, well, I don't want people's taxes to go up when they have to pay for insurance for drug recovery. Well, I guess he's not counting it, as everyone else does, as a disease now. So, cancer is a disease, addiction is a disease, diabetes is a disease. We're treating it as a public health crisis at this point in this country now, and it's a disease, and he voted against it.
Well, we either pay up front for it to help with intervention and
Well,
treatment
that's also a
services, or we
no-brainer.
pay for it on the incarceration end.
And
And personally, I know just having the opportunity to have gone through with all of our candidates since May, meeting and talking with people, and I'm fairly new to the community here. I think most people know that. We talked a little bit about it this morning. I also worked as a social worker in crisis intervention for 15 years in southern New Jersey, and was on a critical response team with police departments responding to, obviously, mass issues in communities. And one of the things that I know about mental health and about drug addiction is that we all pay for it. We pay for it emotionally, we pay for it physically, we pay for it financially, we pay for it in terms of work, young people being ready to enter the workforce. We pay for it in terms of lifelong issues. I also have a brother who is struggling with addiction issues and a nephew who's in heroin recovery. They don't live in New Jersey. So I've seen firsthand about that, but at the end of the day, this comes back to some of the things that I've been hearing from people in the Mount Olive community, is how this has directly impacted not only their families, but their income. We've heard that from several people here.
Can you talk about foreclosures? That's,
Right.
people are going into foreclosure because they have a family member who has wasted their savings away on a drug problem.
Exactly, and who can't get access.
When I bring up our legislators, I'm not bringing that up to say another reason to bash my
Right.
opponent. The point is that when I talk to the Center for Prevention and Counseling, they're telling me we get no resources from Trenton. So if we don't have advocates down there saying we have a problem up here in District 24 and we need resources for it, because they don't advocate for it, because they don't believe it's a disease or they don't believe it's a serious problem, then once again, we're getting left behind by the state.
And I think
And
Jen
that's where
said
it's
it best in
coming
her
from.
debate on Tuesday when she was debating Senator Orho. This is a nonpartisan issue. Should be a no-brainer. Nobody should even consider this. And I think another part
Right,
of
if we were
this-
talking about cancer treatment, we would not be making a political statement out of it.
or a no vote.
That's right.
And I think another part of it is that we aren't treating the underlying mental illness. We aren't treating the underlying physical causes. If we had more of that available to people here in Mount Olive, so that they knew they could receive help if they had a mental illness, that maybe they wouldn't start using heroin, maybe they wouldn't become addicted to heroin.
Can I just jump in for a second? 80% of our heroin users begin their addiction to heroin and opioids with prescription medication. So the other thing that is so important in this conversation is actually looking at reducing the number of prescriptions that are going out for these opioid prescription pills. And they're being offered for chronic pain to patients. But the problem is that the way that these chronic pain relievers work is to attack the nerve endings in the spine, causing additional pain, requiring additional medication, and perpetuating this cycle. So now you have people that have really become addicted to pain medication. All of a sudden their physicians say, you know what, you're a little too close here. They cut them off, and they're looking for alternative ways to get that pain relief. And that is part of the biggest part of this conversation that needs to be it needs to be made aware. The community needs to know that that's what's going on. And so one of the things that we just saw actually is that our Attorney General in New Jersey stepped up and said they are filing a lawsuit against the fentanyl distributors, the manufacturers of fentanyl. Fentanyl is 10 times more deadly than heroin in 1/5 of the quantity of it. So we're talking about something that is extraordinarily potent. The morbidity rate for fentanyl is huge. In Sussex County, I just went to a meeting and learned that 21 people had died as of the date of the meeting due to overdose. 17 of the 21, they found either fentanyl or heroin.
But where did they, I'm sorry. This is like blaming people who drive cars, alcoholism, guns. I own a gun. If the gun doesn't kill.
Sure.
Who's prescribing the fentanyl?
The,
It's a legal drug.
the medical providers are.
The medical provider. So
Sure.
we're going to hold the manufacturer responsible for the people who are distributing it.
Well, it's part and parcel, right? So we have manufacturers that are actually sending out reps to doctors. I mean, listen, Big Pharma has admitted, when you're talking about OxyContin, for example, OxyContin has settled multiple lawsuits to the
Correct.
tunes of hundreds of millions of dollars because they admitted that they represented that OxyContin was less potent and less addictive of a substance than it actually was. They
Okay.
flooded the market with it. That is on the manufacturer,
Are
absolutely
you going to
it
support and
is.
vote for a law that prohibits any donations and contributions to state elected officials from pharma companies? Since if you look at the published report of that, Booker, Menendez, all the Republicans have argued about this, but if you look at the top dozen, including our 2 elected, it's the Democrats. Now, are you going to vote for something that says no contributions from pharma, no lobbying?
My friend,
for
I
drugs?
mean, I don't know that we can ban one lobby and not another.
I'd be
However,
happy if you ban them all.
I'd be happy to ban them all too, let's be honest. I'm
not taking money from any drug company.
Don't say
I don't have
that
to
because
worry
there's probably a
about that.
doctor that's donated to your contributions and they might have received it.
I mean,
That's
this,
kind of like
We
saying,
know.
should you sue the convenience store owner that sold you the cigarettes versus suing the tobacco companies that created it?
well,
That's true, because the tobacco companies were found liable for lying
Exactly.
about,
They-
Right.
and so were the pharmaceutical companies.
I'm
They were
gonna
found
step in for a
liable.
second. They weren't even found liable. They
They admitted
admitted
it.
their
Exactly.
guilt.
They
They
admitted it.
admitted
They
their
were
guilt
smart.
in that.
There's
So-
less penalty if you admit to it than if you get taken to court.
Which is fine, listen, I'm an attorney, I get it,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
when you
No, no,
admit
no.
that you are guilty, you're admitting that you've done this to then make the argument that they didn't play a role. That doesn't fly.
Can we
They've played a
talk
big
about the
role.
stigma-free initiative a little bit more and what that entails? In
Doesn't
terms
that
of how
introduce-
that would implement, what changes would that?
In Morris County,
I know, I was
Jim
asking.
Gannon
Yes.
has a plan, and he'll get you admitted to daytop.
I
So
wanted
actually-
to ask,
I was
I
gonna,
don't
that was
know.
the other part that I was gonna say on that issue is that Morris County has actually done a great
Yeah.
service to its community in terms of removing, the stigma
Stigma.
and arresting
Right.
people and putting them into a detox program, and that is, all Gannon, yeah.
Detox isn't treatment though.
I have to
Go ahead.
I mean, a lot of this, in my personal opinion, seems to be reactive as opposed to proactive. I grew up in Mount Olive. I graduated high school in 2007. I know I can bring to mind 3 people that I went to high school with that are dead because they overdosed from heroin. When I grew up here, living here, a big complaint that a lot of people have in this area is there's not a lot to do in the area. Do you think that there's anything that you guys can do proactively on town council to create programs, activities, things to do after school to kind of get people from sitting at home being like, oh man, I don't have anything to do. Like, what can we do to pass the time?
So you don't have to go hunting and fishing.
Play sports.
Alan is now going to be taking people, meeting them at Bud Lake, officially
No,
for the after.
Alan will take the.
That's fine, an official program, you got
That's
it.
right.
No problem.
But actually,
You are right.
that's a great question,
Correct me if
Sean.
I'm
Put it on
wrong.
local.
Fish
Correct
for
me if I'm
health.
wrong.
You just have to-
Yeah.
I believe that there's, I may be wrong, but I remember hearing something about you have to pay to play sports in Mount Olive now, is that correct?
Unless you do not have the money economically.
Okay.
Both my kids went to Mount Olive High School.
Okay.
Both played multiple sports at the school. Both played the most expensive sport that exists, which is ice hockey. Both also played travel ice hockey, so I can tell you about the financial
And
contribution.
Sean, I would say the best thing to get kids to do is get them civically involved.
Absolutely.
Get them involved
My
in
daughter.
getting people elected, whichever party they believe in. Which
Well, no,
reminds me that we have to go knock on doors, so I'm sure. Thank you, everybody, so much.
On a more local topic, we talked about open space, or you mentioned open space as candidates. I believe Mount Olive has the most open space of any municipality in Morris County. So the question becomes, we also have an extensive open space fund right now, which is being used to fund recreation and other things. Part of the reason Greenbaum has refused to move different lands is because of the Highlands Act, which doesn't allow for us to develop almost anything unless it was previously ruled as being developable, which is the Simhoff estate, etc. The state did not offer to buy the Simhoff estate. I was actually personally involved as a consultant with bringing in the Chinese to look at that particular property. They didn't want to pay the money that the existing developer was willing to pay for it. So when you talk about expanding open space, what percentage of space in Mount Olive is available for open space right now that is not in the Highlands? Because you don't need to preserve the Highlands, it can't be developed. We already have the illegal taking.
You're right, we have more open space than any other town in Morris County. But, you know, as the Highland Council started out, you couldn't build a house on, it would take you 25 acres to build
Right.
one house
Yep.
in the Highlands. They're now down to, I think, 7 or 8 acres at this point in time, and I think, you know, the Highlands Act can change, and I think we need to prepare to do that. There are spaces up River Road that are open space. There are spaces up Route 206 that are not open space.
Right by the power lines. and
Right by the
whatnot.
power lines. And there are certain areas that could be attractive to a developer ultimately if the Highland Act, you know, goes away or
Right.
gets changed. And I
Okay.
think we should need to
To look at
begin
that.
to proactively look at that.
We really need to start to wrap this up. I don't know if anybody has anything else.